In 1935, a single telegram was dispatched to every embassy in the world. It contained a demand that seemed like a linguistic whim, but was actually a declaration of war against the Western imagination. It stated, "Exotic Persia is dead. From this moment on, you will call us Iran." But why would a nation with the most romanticized name in history, a name synonymous with silk, poetry, and empire, voluntarily cast it into the fire? The answer lies in a terrifying truth. Iran is the only civilization in history that has been systematically destroyed by every major conqueror. From Alexander the Great to Genghis Khan. From Alexander the Great to Genghis Khan, only to wake up a century later and realize it had actually conquered its conquerors from the inside out. It is a cultural virus that the world's greatest empires couldn't cure. Before we unseal this archive and reveal the hidden mechanics of the Persian Phoenix, subscribe to Silent Archive for more forgotten history. File 01, The Catalyst. To understand Iran, you must stop looking at it as a country and start looking at it as an idea. 3,500 years ago, nomadic tribes calling themselves Aryans, the noble ones, descended onto a sun-scorched plateau from the steppes of Central Asia. While the rest of the world saw the earth as a playground of capricious gods, the Iranians invented a terrifying new concept: dualism. Light versus dark, truth versus the lie. They were the first to suggest that time isn't a circle, but a straight line leading to an apocalypse. This wasn't just religion, it was a geopolitical roadmap. File 02, The Descent. In 330 BCE, Alexander the Great burned Persepolis to the ground. In 651, Arab armies shattered the Sassanid dynasty. In 1220, the Mongols turned Iranian cities into literal mountains of skulls. Then came the demons. The loss was immense. An estimated 2,500 tons of gold and silver were looted, and centuries of religious writings consumed. This destruction effectively ended the Achaemenid era and remained a focal point of Persian national trauma for centuries. But the cultural virus was already spreading. In 651, Arab armies shattered the Sassanid dynasty. While the military conquest was swift, the cultural transition was complex. Persian scholars used the Shu'ubiyya movement to assert the superiority of their culture. Persia became Muslim, but it did not become Arabized. But here is the dark truth. Iran did not resist these invaders with steel. It resisted with bureaucracy and art. Iran didn't lose its wars. It simply waited for its enemies to become Persian. In 1220, the Mongols turned Iranian cities into mountains of skulls. During this invasion, up to 90% of the population in certain provinces was liquidated. The irrigation systems that turned the desert into a garden were destroyed so thoroughly they have never fully recovered. It was a trauma that changed the Persian psyche. Within 2 generations, the Mongol Khans were writing Persian poetry. The conquerors came to kill, but they stayed to learn. The Ilkhanate became a Persian state. This is the alchemy of defeat. Iran has a unique ability to absorb its conquerors, but in the 20th century, the conquerors brought a different kind of weapon: the pen. File 03, The Silent Witness. Let us look at a lost document from the Great Game. In 1907, Britain and Russia signed a treaty in St. Petersburg. They didn't even invite the Iranian Shah. They drew a line across the map. The North belonged to the Tsar, the South belonged to the British Crown. This era of semi-colonialism left a scar that explains every Iranian move on the modern chessboard. It was a betrayal of the democratic constitutional movement. The Silent Witness. A letter from a local merchant in Tabriz, dated 1911, describes Russian hangings of activists. It reads, "The frost does not just bite the skin, it freezes the soul." Russian troops crushed the resistance. The highest religious authority was hanged on the day of Ashura. This wasn't just occupation, it was the dismantling of a soul. During this period, the forgotten famine claimed millions. Statistics suggest it was worsened by British grain hoarding for their troops, a trauma the archive never forgot. The Iranian plateau became a playground for giants who did not know its name. But soon, the game would shift from maps to something much deeper: oil. File 04, The cover-up. The most successful cover-up in Iranian history wasn't orchestrated by a king, but by a foreign intelligence agency. In 1953, the CIA and MI6 launched Operation Ajax. Shocking statistic. The U.S. government spent just $1 million to hire street thugs and bribe newspapers to overthrow Mohammad Mossadegh. For decades, the official narrative was that the people rose up to save their Shah. It took 60 years for the CIA to formally acknowledge the truth. This was the moment Iran realized democracy was often a mask for oil access. Mossadegh had nationalized the oil industry, challenging British control. The Abadan crisis crippled the economy, but it was the covert strategy that finally shattered the nation's experiment with democracy. The plan involved psychological warfare and staged unrest. The CIA funded fake communist riots to scare the public and clergy into believing a takeover was imminent. The modern theocracy wasn't born in a vacuum. It was born in the shadow of this betrayal. The 1953 coup delegitimized the Shah, turning him into a puppet in the eyes of his people. By removing secular nationalists, the coup left a political vacuum that only the mosque could fill. The trust deficit created in 1953 would culminate in the flames of the 1979 revolution. Empires do not die, they hibernate. And the memory of 1953 remained a potent rhetorical tool for Ayatollah Khomeini to unite a nation against foreign intervention. File 05, The Legacy. Why did the name change in 1935? Persia was a name given by the Greeks. Iran was the name they gave themselves. It was a reclamation of the Aryan identity, a move that, in 1935, carried a very specific and dark geopolitical weight with a rising Germany. Reza Shah sought a third force to counterbalance Britain and the Soviets. Today, the legacy of Iran is a haunting paradox. It is a nation that produced Rumi's poetry of love, yet is viewed through the lens of nuclear enrichment and suffocating sanctions. This identity was built on modernization and sovereignty, yet it led to the 1941 invasion and the abdication of the Shah. A nation's pride, forever intertwined with foreign interest. Iran holds the world's fourth largest oil reserves, yet its people live under the shadow of economic isolation, a resource that brought wealth, but also the giants who would claim it. But beneath the political turbulence lies a culture that remains resilient. Poetry in Iran is not academic. It is a living practice, a unifying force across ethnic and social divides. File 12. The Foundation. Long before the Persians, the Elamite civilization provided the first layer of Iranian identity. In southwestern Iran, they built an empire that rivaled Babylon. Their crowning achievement was Choga Zanbil, a sacred ziggurat built over 3,000 years ago. It represented a uniquely Iranian architectural heritage, a foundation for all that followed. The Elamite legacy, particularly the title King of Susa and Anshan, was later adopted by Cyrus the Great. The Persian Empire was not born in a vacuum. It was built on these ancient stones. File 13. The Median Rise. In the 7th century BC, the Median tribes unified to resist Assyrian aggression. Cyaxares modernized the army, creating a professional force. The defining moment was the fall of Nineveh in 612 BC. Allied with Babylon, the Medes breached the walls of the world's largest city, ending centuries of Assyrian dominance. The unification of the Iranian plateau was complete. The stage was set for the Achaemenid Persians to transform a regional power into a global superpower. From the Median unification to the Persian expansion, the pattern was clear. Iran survives by consolidating its strength and knowledge against the giants of the age. File 14. The Intellectual Empire. In the 11th century, the Seljuk era saw the institutionalization of Iranian governance and education through the Vizier Nizam al-Mulk. The Nizamiya schools were the world's first state-sponsored universities. They standardized education and provided a bulwark for orthodoxy, ensuring social mobility for the poor. This era was defined by the tension between two giants, the mathematician Omar Khayyam and the philosopher Al-Ghazali. Rationalism versus revelation. Khayyam developed a calendar more accurate than the Gregorian and pioneered algebra. His poetry reflected on the transience of life, embodying the soul of Persian thought. The Seljuk legacy was not just conquest, it was the empire of the mind. Knowledge became the ultimate survival mechanism for a civilization under constant siege. File 15, the modern phoenix. In the 20th century, the White Revolution sought to modernize Iran from the top down through land reform and literacy. The Literacy Corps sent graduates to teach in rural villages, raising the literacy rate significantly. But these reforms also planted the seeds of social displacement. Modernization brought education, but it also alienated traditional forces. The social pressures of the White Revolution would eventually contribute to the fire of 1979. Today, 21st century Iran demonstrates remarkable resilience through science. Consistently ranking as a global leader in nanotechnology, it asserts its survival through self-sufficiency. From ancient ziggurats to modern clean rooms, the Iranian spirit remains unchanged. It is a nation that lives in the future as much as the past, surviving everything. The verses of mystics like Rumi and Hafez provide a cultural continuity that transcends regimes. For the modern Iranian, this literary legacy offers a sense of belonging older than any ideology. The silent archive reveals a final detail. Empires do not die, they hibernate. Iran has outlived the Greeks, the Romans, the Mongols, and the British Empire. Who is the conqueror and who is the conquered? History is not what happened, it is what survives, and Iran survives everything. This has been the Silent Archive. Subscribe for more forgotten history. Iran survives everything. Thank you for watching. Comment below to cast your vote for our next investigation.